Nuffic, a platform where inspiring ideas come together to achieve internationalization in education. In this episode, we dive into COIL VE, where education experts share their insights and experiences about this transformative type of learning. Collaboration is key in COIL VE, so let's find out how partners and students work together.
When we are looking for a partner to do COIL with, I think there's a couple of things that we need to look at. One, I think it's very important and very interesting to look for difference. So I try to find a partner that teaches a different subject matter or teaches a different discipline, speaks a different language, but most importantly, has a different perspective. So that could be because they are geographically somewhere else, maybe in the global south, or because they speak a different language, which influences how we look at things. So I think difference is much more interesting than sameness. So that would be my first recommendation. My second one would be to look for interdisciplinarity. When we work with somebody who teaches something, a different discipline than we do, our students and us as lecturers, we really need to collaborate for students to understand how their knowledge complements each other. It's also important to really think about and to consider equitable collaboration. So when we know different things, we are all equal. We all need each other the same way. Nobody's knowledge is more superior than the other, and this creates more balance for students to feel equal, but also for the academics.
In my opinion, it's very important the design phase, in which we need to think very well about the learning outcomes of the project. So we need to find a final product in which all involved parts can reach the desired goals. Those goals might be the same or might be completely different depending on the context. For example, I'm a teacher of Spanish as a foreign language. For my students, it's important to improve their language skills, but the partner institutions are educators of future teachers in this field. So for them, it's very important to practice their teaching skills. We have these differences, but we also have common goals that are the ones related to the digital skills and the ones related to the cultural knowledge. And what is also as important as this is that the learning outcomes are well connected with the learning outcomes in the study programs. And all the involved parts need to be aware of all the elements involved so that we work together and we do a good design of the activities and the final product.
First of all, I think it's important to, when you're collaborating with a partner, that you build up a personal relationship because students will often mimic the relationship that lecturers have together. So if you are designing together with the other lecturer, you should also be interested in the personal life, share, ask and inform, because the first COIL is usually between the lecturers.
Collaboration is the most important aspect. It's the C of COIL, but it's also the hardest thing to design. So I think collaboration, first of all, needs to be intentional. Students don't collaborate because we want them to, but because they need to. So we need to design for collaboration and think of it like a puzzle where the students know different things or they have different skills that complement each other and they need each other to complete the task. We also need to leverage maybe inequalities that might exist or power imbalances, such as language. If one of the student groups, for example, American students, speak English as a first language, we might give the other groups, for example, Dutch students, the advantage of choosing the technology so that they can all contribute and collaborate in an equal fashion.
Collaboration between students look like a final product in which the learning outcomes might be the same for all the involved participants or might differ depending on the context. As teachers, we have the obligation to create a design that allows them to reach the learning outcomes, but also to feel comfortable in the project. So in achieving this, we can think, for example, about the group composition, the group size. It should not be very numerous if we are working online. But also, for example, do we want to give each of the members of the group a different role? For example, do we want that each of the sessions are moderated by a different participant? This depends on the context. Also, in the design of the activities, in my opinion, the first steps have a very high importance because students need to feel comfortable when they are interacting with others. And for that, it's necessary to give a space in the sessions to ice-breaking activities and also to social interaction so that they can know each other better.
Collaboration between students is not something that happens automatically. It's important to first build up a good relationship between the students, but it's also important to have a very good task design to allow creativity, but also to bring out the challenges that COIL brings. COIL is not always easy because you have to communicate across time zones, across cultures, across disciplines. But by bringing up a task that is creative and that allows for this challenge, this is possible. An example that I have is a project between The Hague and a Japanese university where the students had to work on future scenarios. And the students in Japan have a background and a subject much more related to creative thinking and science fiction. And the students in The Hague had a bit more of a theory behind future of work from communication and HR perspective. And by setting up a task that allows them some freedom, it was possible that both in the end product, they could be creative, but also in the process, they could collaborate together.
The added value for me to do COIL is that it transforms how I teach. So when I did my first COIL project, I remember becoming aware that we were opening up the classroom and my students to the world. The walls of the classroom came down and we were connecting what we know with the rest of the world. So my students, instead of reading about Mexico, were actually talking to students in Mexico. So the other advantage for me as a professor was that I became much more aware of the hidden curriculum, and specifically with grading. I graded a certain way because that's how we do it in the Netherlands, and my Mexican partner asked me questions about that. And just being aware of that bias has enabled me to change how I teach, and it has improved me for the better. So I think in general, what I see is this transformative power. When academics do COIL, they look at their teaching practice differently, and it often enriches their teaching practice.
For me as a teacher, to do a COIL, the added value is that I am sure that now my courses are more meaningful because I offer my students the opportunity to participate in a project and they can use in real life what they are learning in class. So I think this is the most important. Also, you get in contact with colleagues from other institutions. And of course, you learn from them the way they organize, the way they assess, the way they are used to design. So I see my learning as a circle. So I use my knowledge in a project, and from the project, I take back experiences that I can use in my own institution. Another aspect that I also think is relevant is the participation in conferences related to COIL. And here, for example, you get in contact with fields of expertise that are very different to yours. I can mention as an example my participation in last Congress, in which I watched a presentation about nursing. And I was very interested, it was very inspirational the way the project was organized, even if the content is completely different to my own field.
The added value as a teacher, I would say, is that you're developing yourself professionally because you're learning about different cultures, different educational systems with your partner, but also you're gaining more knowledge on the subject that you are teaching and how students are working on that together. And this professional development, it's also about reflecting on your role as a lecturer. Because as a lecturer, you're often busy with what should you bring to students and what should you teach. But in COIL, it's much more about what students deliver and about coaching groups to get those results.
COIL VE helps foster internationalization at home for all students. By purposefully integrating international and intercultural elements into your curricula, your education is future-proof and empowering students to become well-prepared professionals in their field. Would you like to know more about Coil VE and how to implement it? Visit the link below for more information.